Okay, peeps, welcome back. So, today we're going to be talking about how we intend to maximize gains and yield going into the next crypto bull run with CONY. Let's get it. So, the first thing that we're going to take a look at here is a price chart comparison between Coinbase and Bitcoin. As you guys know, Bitcoin makes up a very large percentage of the overall cryptocurrency market capitalization. As a matter of fact, if we go over here to a popular site that everybody follows, which is called coingecko.com, you guys can see that the market cap of Bitcoin currently is $500 billion. Next biggest market cap would be on Ethereum, which is 196 billion. So let's take a look at the previous bull runs. So this time frame right here in roughly about April, May of 2021 was when Coinbase had their public IPO. Basically, what that is, that's an initial public offering, meaning that investors, I think specifically accredited investors, can come in and they can buy shares before the public announcement of the company, meaning that the people who buy the shares before the company goes public get the chance to buy them privately. And then the company goes public, and then all of a sudden, everybody else out in the public gets to buy it. So that's how that works. But you guys can see here that they IPO'd in 2021. We kind of had a drop here, which I'm going to get over in a minute, basically down to June lows. As you guys can see, this swing high to swing low here was pretty large. It was about a 50% drop. I'm going to get into why that was in a minute. But then Coinbase went back up from September to about November, about 63%. And the reason why we're mentioning Coinbase and not CONY here is because CONY doesn't really have a lot of price action history and it doesn't have a lot of yield history, but it is based on Coinbase, which is the underlying stock. So that's why we're looking at Coinbase. So we'll compare the two bull market charts here. You can see that Bitcoin basically ran up from September 2020, peaked out in April 2021, roughly about the same time that Coinbase went public, and then it dropped. You guys can see that pretty much Bitcoin and Coinbase were moving synonymously. Again, Bitcoin dropped roughly about the same amount as Coinbase, and then it ripped off of this support level, went back up to this new peak, which, as you guys can see on the Coinbase chart on the right, the peak for Bitcoin was almost exactly the same as the peak for Coinbase. This is important to keep in mind because if you intend to hold CONY for, like, let's say the next 16 months, you want to sell CONY for a massive profit at the top of the bull market peak in Bitcoin, this is what you want to be looking at. You want to be looking at the price correlation between Bitcoin and Coinbase stock. So if we continue on here, we take a look from the peak to the downside, you can see that it's pretty much moving in sync. We went from this peak down to this support level here, and we kind of got this stalling out on support here on both Coinbase and Bitcoin. Came back up, hit this trend line, went lower, and then it kind of bottomed out. As you guys can see, it moves almost perfectly with Coinbase here. Bitcoin and Coinbase, if you follow both the charts simultaneously, you'll see that it's doing almost exactly the same thing. And then Bitcoin went up, and Coinbase kind of oscillated. It went up after Bitcoin did, and is looking pretty much right about the same at this point in time. So why is this important? Well, what I believe is that when Bitcoin goes up, the price of Coinbase will go up. And as a result of that, the price of CONY will go up. When Bitcoin goes into a new bear market, the price of Coinbase will go into a new bear market. And the price of CONY will also go down. So from the peak to the low on Bitcoin, it was about a 76% drop. If we do a comparison on Coinbase, it was actually a bigger drop. It was about 91%. So I guess you could say in this instance that Coinbase was actually a little bit more volatile than Bitcoin. But the other reason why it probably had a bigger drop too is because of the SEC FUD, and SEC is trying to, breathe down all the crypto companies' necks and all that stuff. Like, oh, you guys aren't doing things right, and this and that, and they want to go after them because it's a government watchdog. That's what they do. So basically, looking into the next Bitcoin halving, One more thing before I get into that. So we did say in a previous video that we believe that CONY will have somewhere between a 90 to 100%, 110% yield based on volatility. Before we get into the next Bitcoin halving and Bitcoin bull cycle, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the price comparisons on these now. So this is okay. We're going to move this to the 4-hour chart so we can get like a better perspective of what we're looking at here between Coinbase and Tesla. So we'll just take some of the recent swing highs, swing lows. So you get your low to your high here on Tesla, about 83%. You get your low to your high here on Coinbase, you got about 140%. So that's roughly about a 1.5x. Coinbase is roughly about a 1.5x the volatility or swing movement of Tesla. So from the high to the low, you got about 36% on Coinbase, which again, the volatility would reflect in CONY. And for Tesla, you get like a little bit less than Coinbase. So the volatility of Coinbase ranges, I'd say probably somewhere between 1.25 to 1.5 times the amount of Tesla based on a futures trader who does not trade options. If you guys want to know about options, I am not the guy to ask. I don't trade options, at least not currently. It's not really my specialty. I know very basic surface level stuff about it, but volatility is relevant in all markets. It doesn't matter if it's stocks, crypto, futures, foreign exchange. It doesn't matter. Every market has volatility. The more volatility it has, the more potential money there is to be made in options. The less volatility, the less money there is to be made in options and futures. So now that was the basis that I came up with on how CONY could potentially pay 90 to 110% yield. It could go up, it could go down with time. We really don't know. We'll just have to wait and see, okay? So let's head back over to the big Bitcoin and take a look at what we could basically expect to be possibly seeing going forward in terms of price action. So if we take a look at the chart of Bitcoin, and we actually did sell almost all of our native crypto at the top. Just so you guys know, we do have actual cryptocurrencies. We sold pretty much all of it at the top. We were able to time the top almost perfectly. Not quite perfectly, but pretty close. And also almost the bottom perfectly, but not exactly to the dollar amount. We're not going to get in that video today. We'll talk about this later. But so basically what we want to measure is pretty much what the market cycle low of the previous bear market was and compare it to the highs. So if you guys can see from the low to the high here, we have about $3,000 Bitcoin. And the high is roughly about 69K. So that's about a 23x from the lows to the highs. Now let's just assume for a second that Bitcoin only does half of that from the low to the highs on this next big Bitcoin bull run. So we would basically be looking for, I think, like roughly around an 1100% return. I actually got to zoom out here. So the bottom was, we'll say roughly about 16K. Let's actually do this in a calculator. This would be easier in a calculator. So 16K times, we'll just say, we'll be generous here and we'll say a 12x. So it's roughly a little bit more than half of the previous run up. So you're taking a look at a price potential of about 192,000 on Bitcoin. There is some other indicators we can look at later, but since we're not getting directly into crypto yet, we don't want to do that until next month. So 193,000 would get you about a 1,200% gain, or basically about an 11x. So if you owned $1,000 worth of Bitcoin, it would now be worth 12,000, or at the then assumed future peak of Bitcoin. If you had $10,000 worth, it'd be 120,000. If you had $100 worth, it'd be 1,200. I mean, 100's not much, but you basically get like $1,000 of gains. So what would that do to the price of Coinbase? Well, let's just assume for a second that Coinbase only did roughly about, well, I think it would be fair to say maybe 75% of Bitcoin's bull run. Let's just assume that it also did, let's say, about an 8x. So you got 30 times 8 would be about $240. To be honest, that's not really even that high because that's not even at the previous peaks, but you would still get an 8x from the low of Coinbase stocks. So what is that going to do to CONY? Well, if we flip over to CONY, see, you got to give me a minute to find it, guys. I have a lot of stocks in my watch list here. So if we flip over the price of CONY and we just assume for a second that the price of CONY only did basically a 4x from the lows, so you got 18 times 4. Man, I really got to zoom out. This is how crazy the parabolic runs are in crypto. You have to zoom out to be able to see what you're actually looking at here. So 18 times 4 is basically 72. So what you'd be looking at is potentially, assuming it was only half that of Coinbase, and Coinbase was only 75% of the potential upside of Bitcoin, you'd be taking a look at about a 290% gain on CONY. CONY shares could be valued as high as $72, assuming that all those metrics are true. Now, if we go back to Coinbase, and we're going to assume this time that it does exactly what Bitcoin would do. So if Bitcoin does an 11x, Coinbase does an 11x. So from the low to the high, we already know 30 times 11 is 330. So that would put Coinbase almost roughly at exactly the previous peak of the previous Bitcoin cycle. So let's just assume that Bitcoin does an 11x, Coinbase does an 11x, and then CONY does basically about a 5.5x. So we go back to CONY here. We pretty much just take where the low was. We're pretty much at the lows in crypto right now. I mean, could Bitcoin go lower? Yes, usually in the second half of the bear market year or pre-halving year. Well, technically last year was the bear market year, so we'll just say that this year is the pre-halving year. Technically speaking, historically, the second half of the pre-halving year has always been bearish. Basically, June through December is a downtrend. So prices could go lower, but we really don't know at this point. So you take 18 times 5.5. You could be taking a look at a price potential, and again, assuming that the upside is capped here, you could be potentially seeing as much as maybe we'll be conservative and say a $90 CONY price. So with YieldMax, the way that I've been seeing it is when the share prices go up, like Nvidia on last month, the dividend goes up, and when the share price goes down, like on Tesla, for example, the dividend goes down. So if CONY is going to be going up during this bull market, then basically what we should expect to see based on previous data is that CONY's dividend yield is also going to go up. How much it's going to be, honestly, I don't know, guys. We're pretty much just taking shots in the dark here. It could be, $1 a share. It could be a couple dollars a share. I mean, if it's 100%, I mean, I honestly really don't know. I mean, 100% yield as of current, 100% on your money. If you, well, I mean, I really don't know. So basically 100% of whatever you have invested. If you have $1,000 invested, you get 1,000 a year, 10,000 a year, so on and so on. So let's take a look at the Bitcoin block reward halving calendar. So we're on the Bitcoin clock here. As you guys can see, you got all your metrics here. Trying to see if it shows the previous halving. So yeah, the previous halving was in May 11, 2020, which I did show you guys on the chart. So pretty much Bitcoin is going to have its next halving in late April of next year. Starting next month, we are going to be talking about crypto and what our plans are for that. But if you guys wanted to know when the next Bitcoin halving is, here it is. Usually, I would say roughly about 5 to 8 months, somewhere in there. Roughly about 5 to 8 months after the halving event, Bitcoin starts taking off for its previous all-time highs. And then when it succeeds the previous all-time high, in this case being 70,000, that's when crypto really starts to take off to the upside. So this is something to keep in mind for the future. So that's pretty much it for our video for today, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed this content. Basically, what our plan is to buy CONY shares, hold them for passive income in the immediate to short term, midterm, even. We plan on holding CONY shares basically all the way to the Bitcoin cycle top. And then as soon as we see indications that on multiple metrics that tell us that Bitcoin is basically hitting the top of this future cycle that we're going to be in, we're going to sell the shares of CONY and take that profit out and move it into other high yielding stocks. So that's basically our game plan. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this content. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see y'all later. Peace.